Hello, pleasure goddesses. I'm here today to share with you a little bit about this problem of feeling lonely and what I'll say flat. You could also say bitter or overwhelmed or dry. I feel like there's a lot of women, especially professional women, who get really involved with their career or with other aspects of their life that are very driven and goal oriented. And then at some point after a few years, either just completely burn out to the point where they have to move to another country and live on the beach for a few months just to recuperate, or they just become really brittle and dry and hard, almost like a shell. Like they've created this shell that's all about achievement, but there's no juiciness or radiance or love or inner delight that's shining through. And the reason that I see this to be a problem is that it leads to what I would call a desireless life. I have a woman who I started working with a few months ago, and when I asked her on our first call, what is it that you really want? Her response shocked me. She said, I don't know. I go to work, I take care of my kids, I take care of my husband, I do Toastmasters, I do all these things in the community. And then I said, well, is that making you happy? And she said, well, I mean, it's okay. It's what I'm supposed to do. And it took a while for her to even realize that she had desires. She wanted to dress in a different way with more color. She wanted to spend a whole day just by the pool and relaxing and taking a resort day. That she wanted to become closer with girlfriends. She felt like she actually felt really alone. That socially no one really understood her. And it caused her to feel like she was bracing herself all the time, presenting this picture of the perfect woman, but inside feeling really unconnected from girlfriends, from social support, from women in her life, and even to some extent her family. So the cost of these things when we feel brittle, dry, overwhelmed, disconnected, lonely, not in touch with our desires, is that we can just be kind of floating through life. And floating through life is different than riding a wave of pleasure. When I think about floating through life, I think about floating through life as being really stuck in your head and just kind of moving through your day almost on autopilot. And then the days just go by on, and all of a sudden you're in a loveless marriage or a career that you don't like. Or, worst thing is you just float along, and then at the end of your life you're like, holy shit, I didn't do anything that I really wanted to. I didn't do the things that made me happy. I just spent my whole life taking care of other people. And I don't want to live that life, and I'm sure you don't want to live that life either. So the difference between that floating through life in a monotonous way and riding the wave of pleasure is that the wave of pleasure is internally generated. Floating through life is more externals, like checking the box and getting your work done and taking care of other people. Riding the wave of pleasure from the inside is being deeply attuned to your desire and your inner state so that you can say, what do I really want to do today? It doesn't mean that you just skip out on your job, although sometimes that's fun too. Maybe it's, I want to feel magic. And how could I feel magic today? Oh, maybe it's taking a break, and when I get coffee, instead of staying and checking my phone and looking at my email at Starbucks, maybe it's taking a walk and noticing the flowers that are blooming on all the trees around Los Angeles. Or maybe it's doing a little bit of watercolor at night or in the morning and just letting your mind play. Maybe it's pampering yourself with some massage in the shower. So whatever it is, riding your wave of pleasure is going to change moment by moment. But it's really important that we do this so we can live the life that we want and stay ahead of being the victim. So when we're just floating through life and managing things from the externals, it's so easy for things to happen to us because we're just living in this bubble or this shell, and someone could change on the outside. And since we've been so externally focused, if someone changes on the outside, it's devastating. Whereas if we're riding the wave of our pleasure, we can recognize that people on the outside will change, but it doesn't bother us because we're changing just as quickly and just as fluidly and just as organically on the inside by following our pleasure. So there's two things that you need to do in order to solve this problem of just floating through life or becoming dry and hardened and brittle. And the first is to follow your pleasure, which is what we just talked about, to ride that wave of pleasure by checking in. What do I want? What do I want? What do I really want? And prioritizing that as best you can through little moments or through big changes throughout your day. the way that you can make sure that you're following your pleasure is, like I said, checking in. And sometimes if you feel really disconnected, if it's hard to check in, you've got to get in touch with your body. So there's a ton of tips and techniques for doing this, which I'm not going to go into right now. But anything that brings you back into your desire and back into your five senses, back into your physical body, is really, really important for following your pleasure. So in addition to following your pleasure, the other big solve for this issue of being dry or brittle or just floating through life is to ask for help. Like, how many of us feel like we have to be superwoman, that we can't ask for help, not even through our friends, that we have to somehow do it alone? And I remember it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I had gone through, it's not really a breakup. I had only been dating this person for like 2 months. But of course in my mind I was like, oh, it's like my person and it's gonna be great, and had this huge fantasy that was not necessarily connected to reality. Anyway, he told me that he didn't want to see me anymore, and I felt totally devastated. And the old me 3 years ago would have just picked up the pieces on my own. I would have journaled, I would have cried, I would have done yoga, I would have tried to do all the things that I knew of in order to feel better about the situation. But I wouldn't have done the thing that I really needed, which was just to call a friend and tell her how scared I felt that I was going to be alone for the rest of my life. How scared I felt that I was going to be abandoned again and again and again. And just how sad I felt. And that I needed her help. Like, I needed my friend's help when I called her in order to feel better, because I realized that I could just not hold the grief alone. So sometimes we go through things that are so big, and because we've been trained to be independent and to not ask for help, we just try to hold them all inside, like, oh, I can deal with it, it's my pain, like, it's gonna be fine, it's no big deal. Like, we just try to keep it all together. And I just encourage you to not do that, because it just creates that shell of brittleness. Like, by holding everything in and pushing everyone at arm's distance, it does really nothing for our healing process. We can only heal like in relationship and in community. So my two shares with you are to follow your pleasure so that you don't lead a boring, monotonous life that you're just floating through that's dry and brittle, and to also ask for help, because asking for help invites people into your world. It allows them to care for you in times when it's not okay for you to just care for yourself. Like, sometimes you need the support of sisterhood or of other people in your life. And I'm curious if you can write back to this email or put in the comments if you're watching this on Facebook, like, what are you terrified to ask for help with? Like, what is the one thing that you never want to ask for help with? Maybe it's your sex life, maybe it's your finances, maybe it's how to communicate or flirt with a man. And I'm curious what those things are that you're afraid to ask for help, and why does that feel like a big deal to you? Like, why does it feel maybe it's not okay to ask for help? Does that somehow make you a failure? And I'm here to say it doesn't. Like, actually asking for help is a sign of being a total badass and a total rock star, because it's admitting that you can do more with the help of other people. So to that point, if you would like a little bit of help with your love life or your sex life, and you want to schedule some time with me, I've been offering these 45-minute breakthrough sessions, and I've had a few of them now, and it's been amazing the amount of clarity that I'm able to get to with my clients in those 45 minutes. And if I'm not able to help them, then I'll refer them to someone that can. But for the most part, we're able to get massive clarity and massive value and have a lot of fun as well. So if that's of interest of you, if you want to reach out for help in those areas, you can email me or message me on Facebook, and I'd be happy to set up some time. So thank you so much for watching, for following your pleasure, and for asking for help. And I wish you a beautiful and magnificent rest of your day. Mwah.